Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. You guys have been sending in some pretty wild stories about the U.S. and South Africa.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of these news articles, and they're all talking about the same thing. Basically, how the U.S. decided to kick out the South African ambassador.
Oh, wow.
They're calling it persona non grata.
Mm.
And this whole thing happened so fast, like bam, bam, bam. So today, we're going to try to figure out what exactly went down and, like, what's really going on beneath the surface.
Mm.
You know, kicking out an ambassador, that's not something you see every day.
No, not at all. It's definitely a sign that things are pretty tense between two countries. And yeah, we've got the official reasons, but there's always more to the story. Always these layers, you know?
Right, right. So let's start with the timeline. It looks like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he kind of kicked things off. Like, what exactly did he do?
Well, from what the reports say, Rubio decided to make the announcement on, well, X, what used to be Twitter.
Right.
And get this, he did it while he was on his way back from a G7 meeting in Canada. So he's on the plane, and he posts that South Africa's ambassador, Ibrahim Rasool, is persona non grata, which basically means get out, you're not welcome here.
Wow. So he just tweeted out, like, no formal warning or anything.
Well, it seems that way at first, but actually, spokesperson Tammy Bruce from the State Department, she clarified things a bit.
Okay.
After the tweet, they did things by the book, formally. They called the South African embassy staff to the State Department and gave them an official diplomatic note. That's how they officially communicate this kind of decision.
So they did do the official stuff just after the tweet.
Exactly. It's like the tweet was, I don't know, maybe a heads up or maybe just how things are done now. Who knows?
I mean, it is the age of social media, right? So they gave the ambassador a deadline to pack his bags, I assume.
Oh, yeah, they did. The State Department said he had to leave by Friday. And to make things even more urgent, his diplomatic privileges, those special protections ambassadors get, they actually expired the Monday before.
Oh, wow. So no more diplomatic immunity.
Nope, gone. So he was basically a regular guy at that point.
So what did South Africa do? How did they react to all this?
Well, they weren't too happy about it. The South African Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Crispin Fury, he talked about it on TV. He said that, yeah, Rasool was still in the U.S., but he was planning to leave soon. But what really stood out was, Fury pointed out how strange it was that the U.S. announced it all on social media before even going through the proper diplomatic channels.
Didn't he say something about, like, Twitter being the preferred way to communicate or something?
Yeah. He actually said Twitter or X now is the preferred mode of communication. It was kind of sarcastic, like he was poking fun at how the U.S. was handling things. But it definitely shows that South Africa felt like the U.S. wasn't really respecting the usual way these things are done.
Right. So beyond the whole how it was announced drama, let's talk about the why. What was Rubio's reason for kicking out Rasool?
Well, Rubio's tweet was pretty straightforward. He said that Rasool was and I'm quoting here, race-baiting politician who hates President Trump. That was his main reason, at least publicly.
Okay. But he didn't just throw that out there, right? Didn't he link to something specific?
You're right, he did. Rubio's post included a link to a Breitbart News article. This article was about a talk that Rasool gave earlier that Friday in Johannesburg. It was like a video conference thing for some South African think tank.
And what did Rasool say that got Rubio so riled up?
According to Breitbart, Rasool was talking about things that the Trump administration was doing. But the thing is, he was putting it all in the context of how the U.S. is changing, like demographically. He even mentioned that in the future, white people wouldn't be the majority anymore. It seems like that's what really set Rubio off. Rasool connecting Trump's policies to, race and demographics.
So Rasool gives this talk, and then, bam, Rubio tweets him out of the country. That's pretty quick.
Yeah, it was all on the same day. But you have to remember, this wasn't totally out of the blue. There's a whole history of the Trump administration, not being the biggest fans of South Africa. Like, just the month before, Trump signed an executive order to stop giving money to South Africa.
Oh, right. I remember that. And that order was, pretty harsh in how it talked about South Africa, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. The order basically accused the South African government, which is led by black people, of being, against white people. They said they were doing things that were harmful to white South Africans. And on top of that, the U.S. said that South Africa was supporting groups that they consider, bad guys, like Hamas and Iran. So basically, the U.S. was saying that South Africa was doing bad things both inside their country and in the world.
So not exactly BFFs then.
Not really. So you've got this background of tension, and then boom, the ambassador gets kicked out. So how did South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, respond to all this?
Yeah, what did he say?
Well, Ramaphosa talked to reporters on Monday. He said that Rasool would give a full report when he got back to South Africa, which shows they're taking this seriously. But Ramaphosa also tried to, smooth things over a bit. He said that they understood the U.S. was upset, especially about Rasool's comments. But he also said that South Africa was trying to rebuild the relationship with the U.S. and that this was just and I quote, hiccup. A hiccup we are working on straightening out. Like it was no big deal.
Hmm. So playing it cool, trying to downplay things.
It seems like it. And he even directly addressed the people of South Africa, telling them not to worry too much about it. He said they shouldn't have sleepless nights over this. And he emphasized that South Africa wants to work things out with the U.S. in a, official and respectful way. He even specifically mentioned being respectful of President Trump.
Okay, so trying to fix things, but politely.
Mhm.
Now, what about Tammy Bruce, the State Department spokesperson? What did she say from the U.S. side?
Tammy Bruce basically said that the U.S. expects to be treated with respect in diplomatic matters, but she went further than that. She said that Rasool's comments weren't just offensive to Trump, but to all Americans. So she made it seem like it was a matter of national pride and not just a personal grudge by the president.
So bigger than just Trump.
Right. And she also cleared up the timeline a bit. She confirmed that the South African embassy staff were told about the decision on Friday and that Rubio sent his tweet at, 4:42 p.m. that same day. So yeah, the public announcement definitely came before the official communication.
So looking back at all this, what are the big takeaways? What should people remember about this whole ambassador situation?
Well, first of all, kicking out an ambassador, that's a huge deal. It's not like they just recalled him for a chat. This is a serious escalation. Usually it's only lower-level diplomats who get the persona non grata treatment. This means things were really bad between the U.S. and South Africa.
And then there's the whole social media thing, right? Like announcing this huge decision on Twitter before doing the official stuff. That's got to be significant.
Yeah, it definitely shows how much things have changed. Like the South African spokesperson even joked about it, but it raises some serious questions about how countries talk to each other now. Is a tweet enough? Should we expect more official channels first? It's a whole new world of diplomacy, and it's kind of messy.
And we can't forget about Trump's executive order from before, right? That shows that this wasn't just a random outburst over one speech. This was already brewing.
Exactly. The accusations in that order about South Africa being anti-white and supporting Hamas and Iran, that stuff shows a deep disagreement between the two countries. It was basically the setup for this whole ambassador situation.
Okay, so we've gone through the whole story step by step, and it's definitely complicated. But to wrap things up, what's one last thought you want to leave our listeners with? Something to ponder about this whole diplomatic drama.
This whole thing shows how messy the world is right now. You've got domestic politics, international relations, and social media all mixed up in a big, tangled knot. And it makes you think, what does this mean for the future? How will countries communicate? How will they handle their disagreements? And what about the role of social media? It's all changing so fast. And the situation with South Africa and the U.S., it's like a warning sign that things are different now.
It definitely gives us a lot to think about.
For sure.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll be back soon to dive into something else. Until then, keep those news tips coming.
See you all next time.
Bye, everyone.